Have you ever wondered how the female body seems to follow a rhythm so precise that it quietly prepares for the possibility of new life every single month? What's fascinating is that most people learn about periods growing up, yet very few truly understand the remarkable chain of events happening behind the scenes. And the most surprising part? What many people simply call a period is actually just one small chapter in a much larger monthly cycle. Today, we're going to take a journey inside the female body to understand what really happens during the menstrual cycle, how ovulation fits into the picture, and why this process is one of the most extraordinary biological systems in the human body. As you're watching, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. It's always amazing to see viewers joining us from different parts of the world. And if you're interested in learning more about how the body works in simple, easy-to-understand language, make sure you're subscribed. Now, let's begin at the very start. Long before a girl experiences her first period, her body is already preparing for the future. When a baby girl is born, her ovaries contain a huge number of immature eggs. They remain inactive throughout childhood, quietly waiting for signals that won't arrive until years later. Then comes puberty. For some girls, it begins earlier, for others later. Every body follows its own timetable, but eventually, a remarkable communication system switches on. Deep inside the brain, two small but powerful regions begin sending chemical messages throughout the body. These messages travel to the ovaries and essentially say, "It's time." From that moment forward, a repeating monthly cycle begins. This cycle is not random, it is carefully coordinated by hormones acting like messengers, carrying instructions from one part of the body to another. And while many people focus on the bleeding that occurs each month, that's actually only one visible part of a much bigger story. To understand it fully, we need to look at what happens during the first days of the cycle. Imagine a young woman named Emma. The first day she notices menstrual bleeding is officially considered day 1 of her cycle. At that point, the lining inside her uterus begins shedding. Why? Because during the previous month, her body prepared for a possible pregnancy that did not occur. Without a pregnancy, the body no longer needs that extra lining, so it naturally breaks down and leaves through the vagina as menstrual blood. For many women, this phase may last several days. Some experience mild symptoms. Others may notice cramps, fatigue, headaches, or mood changes. Every experience is different. But while menstruation is happening, another important process is already beginning behind the scenes. Inside the ovaries, several tiny follicles start developing. Think of follicles as small protective sacs that contain immature eggs. The brain releases a hormone that encourages these follicles to grow. At first, multiple follicles may begin developing, almost like contestants entering a competition. But usually one eventually becomes dominant. And that's where the story gets even more interesting. As the leading follicle grows, it begins producing increasing amounts of estrogen. This hormone has an important job. It helps rebuild the uterine lining that was recently shed. Picture a gardener preparing fertile soil before planting seeds. In a similar way, the body starts creating a nourishing environment inside the uterus. Blood vessels increase, the lining becomes thicker, nutrients accumulate, everything is quietly being prepared. And yet, the biggest event of the cycle is still ahead. Around the middle of the month, hormone levels reach a critical point. When estrogen rises high enough, it sends a signal back to the brain. In response, the brain releases a sudden surge of another hormone. This surge triggers one of the most important moments in the entire cycle: ovulation. This is when the mature egg is released from the ovary. For many women, ovulation happens without any obvious signs. Others may notice subtle clues such as mild discomfort on one side of the lower abdomen, slight changes in body temperature, or differences in cervical mucus. But regardless of whether it's noticed, a major biological event has just occurred. The egg now begins a journey into the fallopian tube. And here's something many people don't realize. The egg's window of viability is relatively short. It remains available for fertilization for only a limited period of time. This brief stage represents the peak fertility window of the cycle. What happens next depends on whether fertilization occurs. And this is where the body's planning becomes truly remarkable. Before we continue, if you've learned something new so far, take a second to leave a comment. I always enjoy hearing which part of human biology surprises people the most. Now, back to our story. Let's imagine that after ovulation, the released egg travels through the fallopian tube but is not fertilized. The follicle that once housed the egg doesn't simply disappear. Instead, it transforms into a temporary hormone-producing structure. Its primary role is to release progesterone. Progesterone acts like a caretaker. It helps maintain the thickened uterine lining and keeps conditions stable. The body is essentially saying, let's stay prepared just in case. For a short period, everything remains ready. But if fertilization never occurs, hormone production gradually declines. And that's when another chain reaction begins. Without enough progesterone and estrogen, the uterus no longer receives signals to maintain its lining. The lining starts breaking down, blood vessels constrict, tissue separates, and eventually menstruation begins again. A new cycle starts. The process repeats month after month, often for decades. What makes this cycle so fascinating isn't just reproduction. It's the incredible coordination involved. The brain communicates with the ovaries communicate with the uterus. Hormones rise and fall with precise timing. Each stage influences the next. It's a biological conversation happening continuously inside the body. And while textbooks often present the menstrual cycle as a perfect 28-day calendar, real life is rarely that simple. Some cycles are shorter, some are longer. Stress, illness, lifestyle changes, age, and many other factors can influence timing. That variation is often completely normal. In fact, understanding that every person's cycle can be unique helps explain why experiences differ so much from one woman to another. One person may have very predictable cycles. Another may notice significant fluctuations. Both experiences can fall within a healthy range. The key lesson is that the menstrual cycle is not just about periods. It's an ongoing sequence of carefully regulated changes involving multiple organs and hormones working together. The monthly bleeding people see is simply the final chapter of one cycle and the opening chapter of the next. And when you step back and look at the entire process, it's hard not to appreciate how extraordinary it really is. The female body continuously prepares, adapts, communicates, and renews itself month after month in a way that is both complex and beautifully organized. If you found this explanation helpful, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What part of the menstrual cycle surprised you the most? And if you know someone who would benefit from understanding this process more clearly, consider sharing this video with them. As always, remember that educational content can help build understanding, but personal health concerns should always be discussed with a qualified healthcare professional who can provide guidance tailored to individual needs. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.